on a 2003 Dodge Sprinter. We're doing rotors, pads, and sensors on all four. So this would be good for 2003 to 2007 non-dually.
The dually.
So we're gonna start on the back. First thing you want to do is break the lug nuts.
Break them. And Tyson has a rip in his crotch. So if you're lucky, you'll catch a glimpse.
No luck. And one helpful tip, you're gonna want to get yourself a pretty big breaker bar. This is a 25-incher. Our lugs were pretty tight, so we needed quite a bit of power. With the 25-inch, you got a lot of leverage here. Yeah, you don't want to break your lug nuts with your air gun, or you'll damage it. I'm getting winded here, guys. Lug nuts broken. Get them off. All right, so with our specific Sprinter, the rotors were pretty rusted, and so you're gonna want to grab a hammer or something to give it a little finesse,
A little whack whack
to break it loose. Obviously you don't want to break anything, so we're gonna get some PB Blaster.
PB Blast!
We got the PB Blaster, so this stuff's really good for anything that's rusted. It's a penetrating oil. All right, make sure you securely fasten the jack, or else you're gonna have a problem. Now, this thing doesn't want to budge on us, so we're gonna have to do a little trick. This sometimes works. So you just put in the two bottom lug nuts like this, so the wheel doesn't pop off. Remove your safety jack, and then you're gonna lower the jack, and that should put enough pressure to pop this off. All right, it looks like that didn't work. We're gonna do another trick.
Oh!
Ah! My finger. You gotta be careful, I got a boo-boo. All right, so just to give you a quick rundown of the rear brake setup. So you have your rotor, that's this thing, the big disc. You have your caliper over here, and then you have your pads in between there. So the caliper piston's on the back end here. So when you press the brakes, that piston is gonna pinch the pads onto the rotor. So as far as getting these things off, the back, there's two Allen heads on the actual caliper piece. There's one here, and then there's one back here. For this piece right here, it's two separate pieces. This piece has two pretty large bolts. See if the camera can focus, but it's right here, this bolt here, and then there's one on the back side as well. So first thing you're gonna wanna do is get the caliper piston portion off. So it's two Allen keys, just top and bottom. There's these little caps on the top rotor piece, so you pop those off. It's a 7 Allen wrench, so you can either get a standard Allen wrench, and then you might need like a little mini breaker bar like this, or what we have is an Allen set that attaches to a socket. So these are really convenient and nice. So I'll break those loose, pop this cap off on that one. All right, so once I break them loose, I actually use an impact drill like this with a little adapter for sockets. Now these things are super worth the price, maybe like $5 or $10, and you can just hook an impact drill up to it and take these bolts off. And we might need this extension. Get back here. So with these, they're kind of weird. They get stuck in this rubber, so you kind of have to finesse them out with like a flat head or something. And obviously, since we're replacing these, we don't really care about damaging them, so we're just gonna whack them out. Just make sure these main bolts are out of the way so you don't snap one. So for these bolts to clear, You might have to take a flathead and then your Allen, press on the back side as you unbolt it. Just to show you what that should look like. It's this bolt right here. You want it to clear that little gap there. So now that we know that those are clear, we can pop this off and then pull out your sensor, which is right here. That hooks into this piece here. Now we can pop off the calipers. So the caliper pops off like that. You're gonna wanna be careful with the brake line, which is this piece here. So you don't wanna kink it. I would just set this up on here, kind of like that, so you don't pinch the line. Now we pop out the pads. This is what our pads look like. Pretty rusted and pitted out. These things probably needed to be replaced, who knows, 20,000 miles ago. The other one, completely worn down on that side. So now that we have that main caliper off, we need to get these main bolts off for the this bracket that holds the caliper in. Now these bolts are probably the toughest to undo, so you're gonna need a pretty big breaker.
Like, oh, Tyson, you got too many tools. I can't do this. You gotta pay to play the Sprinter game, mother effer.
If you don't have the tools, go buy them or have someone do the job for you. You might as well buy the tools and learn, and it'll probably still be cheaper. We'll grab a little more PB blaster on these big bolts, 18 millimeter. So not all socket sets come with an 18, so you want to be sure if you're buying socket set, you get the 18 set. Another thing to note is most breaker bars are 1/2 inch, meaning they fit like the 1/2 inch socket. This one's the 3/8 drive versus the 1/2 inch, so I had to buy this adapter that just pops on for the 18. Snap it on like that. Broke that loose. All right, so there's that main bracket that holds the caliper in place, and then these are the two main bolts. So we got that off, the caliper, we got the pads out. Now we just need to get the rotor off, and something I'm noticing right now is I forgot to take off this Torx bolt before I took the caliper off. Now in this case, these are the back, so it's gonna be a little easier to do, but probably best practice to take this bolt out very first go. Like usual, little PB blaster, this stuff is the best. Spray that on there. And this is a Torx. Same scenario with those Allens. You're gonna wanna go and get the socket set for the Torx, and it's a T45. Here's my ratchet, and then just break this loose. Break that loose like that. So that's what the T45 looks like. That just pops out of the front of the rotor. A little more PB, you're gonna want to spray on this piece here, and then from the back side. If you have like a pretty old Sprinter, this thing is gonna be like seized up. So you're gonna have to really get in there and whack this thing off. So now we just need to loosen up the rotor. Be careful to not smack the hub, this piece here. And since we're just throwing this rotor away, we don't really care about it. We just need to loosen it up. It's seized on the hub piece here. Spray a little more PB in here. So another thing to remember is the handbrake, so the parking brake, the emergency brake, it's actually on the back, so it's on the inside of this, so the shoes for that are inside. So something you might have to do if you can't get this off is you take a flathead and you shine a light in here, and there's a little dial, and that will loosen up that handbrake. All right, we got the rotor off.
Nice, dude.
After a good amount of persuasion. So if you look, you can see these are the shoes for the parking brake. So those pinch this as like an emergency. So if you look, you actually can poke the flathead through this hole, And then you can adjust the parking brake by moving this. So if you want to adjust the parking brake, that's where you do it. If you're having a hard time getting your rotor off, you need to loosen that up. So just stick a flathead in here and then kind of finesse your way through and just move it like that. All right, not a completely necessary step, but I just take a wire brush and not on the shoe, but just give this a quick scrub down. Get all this gunk off here, all this surface level rust. Now we just need to put the new rotor on, the new pads. We can throw this bad boy back together. Let me go grab the rotor. Spray a little brake cleaner on here. Got a paper towel. All right, so I just had to adjust the shoes a little bit, and then the rotor slid right on. I'm gonna throw in that Torx. Tighten that down. Now you need to take a clamp, something like this, and then you're gonna pinch the caliper right here, this piece, to decompress it. Don't be pinching your brake lines. If your caliper is seized up, you're not gonna be able to move it, and that means you're gonna have to replace it. All right, that took longer than it should, but you're just gonna wanna clamp that caliper down back to the original space so that you can fit the new pads in. Before we put the pads in, we're going to want to put this bracket piece in. It goes this way. Slide it in to show you what that's looking like. We got those 2 bolts in. Those were 18s packed out. This top one. Got to use the ratchet. There isn't space for the impact drill. Now that we got that bracket piece in, we're going to throw in the pads. The sensor pad, you just slide the sensor in here. They're kind of hard to get in. Looks like Alex got this one in for us, so good job, Alex.
Yeah, buddy.
All right, so these are pretty tight, so I just grab something like this and then just pinch them. Obviously not too far because we want it to seat right, so just to make it so it's not as difficult to put in place. Then, so this side here, this side of the caliper is the sensor side with this little bracket piece. We wire the sensor through this back hole, and then we just pop that into place like that. And then this will help us, so push these bolts, push those bolts out. So that's in place. We grab the other pad, and then you just slide the caliper piece in just like this. And then we're going to want to line up those back 2 bolts and tighten it into place, and then we should be good to go. So something that's really going to help is pushing these bolts out so that you can get it aligned. We grab the 7 Allen, get that started, the top, tighten it. Alright, so now we got the caliper tightened. Now we just need to plug in the sensor, so you feed that through and then you just push this in place. So something to note that I just realized with this back is the other side actually has this little bracket that goes into these 2 holes, and then it holds this piece, but it's actually missing on this one. Not sure how big of a deal that is. We might have to order that in. But this side was actually missing, so you will see that though. You just snap the 2 top pieces out and it pops out here. So that is how you replace new rotors, pads, and sensors on a T1N Sprinter. This is the rear. Now let's go and do the front.
All right, so the first things first, break the lug nuts.
All right, we broke her loose. Now we got to get the jack in place.
Hey, look at that.
Same in the front as the back. You have the 2 bolts on the caliper.
Yep.
And then you have the 2 bolts on the little bracket for the caliper, this piece.
So it has to be a 13.
So this is when you grab this tool. It's called a flathead screwdriver.
Yeah.
And then you bang it out, dude.
So don't forget your sensor. Oh.
So you get this in here like this, and then you get the old whacker out. So another trick here would be to get in between the caliper and then pinch it back a little bit, and then that'll just pop right off.
Oh, did you
Get the pads out?
Those are bad pads.
Oh, this is the worst of them.
Let me think about that best.
So this might help. Throw a little PB on there.
Dude, let's get a little PB on there.
Get the bottom one.
Ah,
There we go.
don't strip. Next thing you know, we're gonna take the hammer. We're gonna bang this out a little bit.
Oh yeah, liberation.
We're gonna get all the loose pieces. All right, let's line her up. All right, and this is the.
It's not like we're gonna drive.
Yeah. Wow, dude, that fit on a lot easier than the other side.
Sensor pad goes on the inside, not the outside.
Sensor pad goes on the inside. Oh, right now, we are using a vise to squeeze down the pistons in the caliper so they're up so we can fit them over the brake pads. It's a two-person job.
We finally finished the brake job. Here's all the parts. We also replaced the 2 rear struts, all the pads, and rotors.
So, after a lot of like me supposed to changing it, Tyson stepped in a lot. But when he left to dump the memory card, I got the caliper back on. So we squeeze the pistons together. There's also 2 other piston type things right here that we had to make sure were out. Put in the pads, fed the sensor through this hole, and then pushed it down, making sure all the pistons were back. And it worked out pretty good. Plug in the sensor right there. It's pretty obvious there's like a hole for it. And yeah, and that's how you get the caliper back on. And that's the last part of the brake pad rotor swap-a-roo. Okay, let's put the tire on.